The next part of the freedom of movement guidelines to review is contact on screens. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Luka Garza, does not give his opponent, Davion Mitchell, an opportunity to avoid the contact, and an illegal screen was correctly called. To be considered legal, the screener must get directly in his opponent's path and give him the opportunity to avoid contact. Next, we will see another example of an illegal screen set against a moving opponent. The highlighted offensive player, Desmond Bane, extends his backside into the path of the trailing defender, Anthony Simons, and Bane does not give him an opportunity to avoid the contact. An offensive foul for an illegal screen was correctly called. On the final play in this section, the highlighted offensive player, P.J. Washington, moves to set a screen, but he then extends both arms and he pushes the on-ball defender, Mikal Bridges. This illegal contact clearly affects Bridges' ability to play defense, and the offensive foul was called correctly by the trail official. Next, let's review some examples of the transition take foul rule. On this first play, the defensive player, Joe Harris, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead he effectively gives up on the play by extending his arm across the front of the dribbler, Denny Avdia, initiating illegal contact. This is correctly ruled a transition take foul. Watch this next play closely. The highlighted player, Andrew Wiggins, fouls his opponent, Jamal Murray, immediately after Murray gains possession, but before he has the opportunity to advance the ball. Per the rule put in place this season, this is a transition take foul, and the penalty is 1 free throw plus possession. In contrast to the previous play, here we will see a defensive foul in transition that would not be ruled a transition take foul. The highlighted defensive player, Cole Anthony, makes a legitimate attempt to steal the ball from the dribbler, Victor Oladipo. Anthony does make illegal contact here, and the defensive foul is correctly called. But note that since this was a legitimate attempt to play defense, and Anthony did not give up on the play, this was correctly ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. The next play in this section is another example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul. The highlighted defensive player, Jalen Green, grabs the uniform of his off-ball opponent, Dennis Schroeder, in an effort to slow Schroeder's progress. While this is a clear defensive foul on Green, please note that it is a basketball play, as Green has not given up on the play, and therefore this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. The final play in this section will show another foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul. Following the missed three-point field goal attempt, the highlighted player, Sam Hauser, fouls his opponent, John Morant, right as Morant is gaining possession of the ball. Since this foul occurs with Hauser attempting to gain possession of a loose ball, this would be deemed a loose ball foul and not a transition take foul. As we detailed going into the season, the NBA has implemented more stringent protocols for bench conduct, specifically in regards to game disruption and/or game distraction. This first example shows the highlighted bench player, Joe Ingles, walking out along the baseline during live play to complain about a non-call. The official correctly assessed an immediate technical foul for this violation. Another area of the bench conduct guidelines involves bench players and/or assistant coaches attempting to distract their opponents during live play. Here, we see both players and assistant coaches on the Boston team bench attempt to distract the opposing player, R.J. Barrett, who is attempting a three-point field goal. The officials will assess a technical foul if they observe any bench player or assistant coach attempt to overtly distract their opponent during live play. Another aspect of the bench conduct guidelines involves bench players and/or assistant coaches standing in front of their bench for extended periods of time. Here, we will see an example of a team committing this type of violation. Teams standing in this manner during live play violates the bench conduct guidelines, and after an initial warning, delay of game violations will be assessed. In contrast to the previous example, these next two clips show teams spontaneously standing to celebrate a play on the floor. These are legal reactions, and no penalties would be assessed on either of the examples shown here. Again, to be clear, bench players and assistant coaches may legally stand up to spontaneously celebrate a play on the floor, but they then must sit back down on the bench within a reasonable amount of time. Our final point of education to review is respect for the game, and we will start this section by showing an example of a reaction that exceeds the guidelines. The highlighted player, Bojan Bogdanovic, commits an overt gesture in resentment to the foul call by waving off the official. This type of overt gesture will be met with a technical foul as it exceeds the respect for the game guidelines, whether it is directed towards an official or not. Next, we will see another example of a reaction that exceeds the respect for the game guidelines. The highlighted player, Bol, commits an overt gesture in resentment to the goaltending call by slamming the ball to the floor. A technical foul was correctly called here, as this reaction exceeds the respect for the game guidelines. We will conclude the video in our usual way by showing examples of positive interactions between players and officials. The players and the officials, seen here, communicate in a calm and professional manner. They maintain their composure and avoid any unnecessary gestures. It is a continuing goal for the NBA that all of our players and all of our officials exhibit this type of mutual respect on a nightly basis.